In a world where doubters are constantly shouting, "You can't," it takes a true badass to stand up, defy the odds, and declare, "I can." Enter Francis Ngannou, the absolute embodiment of resilience and determination. From overcoming homelessness to conquering the UFC octagon and now challenging some of the biggest heavyweight icons in boxing, Ngannou's journey is a testament to the power of self-belief. Today on ChampMind Studios, I'm diving right into the mindset of the Predator himself. So join me as I unravel what makes Ngannou truly great from a mindset perspective. And just like any championship mindset video that I do on this channel, I'm going to teach you how to apply those very same principles into your own lives, into your own goals, as you look to unleash greatness. Let's get after it. Welcome to ChampMind Studios. My name is Mitch, and you guys heard the introduction. This is the channel where you come to unleash greatness. It's not a motivational channel. Don't get it twisted. You don't come here for short-term solutions. You come to this channel to elevate your life. And on this channel, I talk about the mindset of some of the most successful individuals and teams, both past and present, and I figure out what makes them great from a psychology and mentality perspective. And I show you how to apply some of those same principles into your own lives so that you can accomplish your biggest dreams, accomplish everything that you're setting out to accomplish in life. And today I'm really pumped up and excited to talk about Francis Ngannou because, listen, you talk about one of the most inspiring journeys. I mean, this guy was homeless. This guy had nothing, came from nothing, and is now making millions and millions of dollars doing what he truly loves, doing what he set out to do in life, which is to become a champion in combat sports. He was the UFC's heavyweight champion, left the organization on top, left as the champion, and faced a ton of backlash for that, faced a ton of pressure, some bullying tactics from the organization, from UFC president Dana White, and he left. He took a huge gamble on himself, a huge bet on himself to transition into the boxing world when very few people thought he could do it. And he went out there and not only had a very competitive fight with arguably one of the greatest heavyweights of our generation in the Gypsy King Tyson Fury, but he dropped Tyson Fury. Dropped him. With zero professional boxing experience. And now he's getting ready to fight Anthony Joshua in Saudi Arabia this coming weekend. And it's just remarkable to see what this guy has been able to accomplish and what he is accomplishing considering where he came from, which again was nothing. I mean, this guy had zero money in his bank account. Nothing. And is now making millions of dollars fulfilling his dream. If that's not proof, if that's not a testament to the human condition, to the human spirit, to what we are truly capable of doing, I don't know what is. So we're going to talk about that here today. But before I get into that, guys, if you're new here, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and ring that notification bell so you do not miss out on the content that's coming your way soon on this channel. Because again, this is where you come to unleash greatness. This is where you come to take your life to the next level. All right, let's dive right into this. I've talked about this before in previous videos, but there are some people in life that are born into better conditions than others. And that's a fact of life. There are people that are born rich. There are people that are born into wealthy families, famous families that are positioned, higher in that, in the race of life, positioned closer to that finish line of success than others. And that's a fact. That is an absolute fact. And we can either sit here and complain about that, gripe about it, talk about how unfair life is, or we can rise up, overcome our current circumstances, and get to that finish line in spite of where we're positioned. Francis Ngannou is proof of that. This guy was born into poverty. He was born as far away from that finish line as you could possibly be born into. And he didn't allow that to stop him from where he knew he was going to go. He saw Mike Tyson at a very young age in his life, and he said, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to be. And it's pretty crazy to think about that, because now, all these years later, Mike Tyson is actually coaching him. So you talk about manifestation. I mean, there you go. But Francis, growing up in Cameroon, he had nothing, no money, and his current environment at that time was poverty. And when we talk about our current 3D circumstances, not allowing our current environment to dictate where we're going, it would have been real easy for Francis to allow his subconscious to believe that that was all he was destined to be. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people, they just, it's all they know. They were born into it, and they just allow that cycle to continue. Francis saw Mike Tyson, and he said, that's what I'm going to be. And he found a way to make it happen. He migrated to Europe and eventually to the United States in 2013 to pursue that dream. By 2015, Francis Ngannou was in the UFC, knocking people the fuck out. This guy had unreal power. The kind of power that you just cannot teach. And his technique wasn't quite there yet. I mean, listen, the guy, again, was poor. He didn't have the money to afford jiu-jitsu classes, wrestling classes. Like a lot of guys, they grow up training in martial arts before they transition into MMA. Francis, he didn't have any of that. He just had a dream, an unrelenting, burning desire to make that dream happen, relentless work ethic, and the kind of knockout power that comes around once in a lifetime. So you mix all those things together, you got a very dangerous individual. And that's what he was. So it didn't take Francis long to establish himself as a huge threat in that heavyweight division. I mean, the guy, he started fighting in 2013. By 2015, he's already in the UFC. That's crazy. That's crazy. With no, real background. No real martial arts background. No real competitive background. In 2 years' time, he's in the UFC and he's blitzing through guys. He's taking dudes out left and right. Some of the top contenders in that division. Guys like former champion Andrei Arlovsky, top rising up-and-comer Curtis Blades. He is just blitzing through these guys. And by 2017, he gets that fight with Alistair Overeem, absolutely destroys Overeem. I mean, that uppercut that he landed that snapped Overeem's head back, still to this day, one of the most vicious and brutal knockouts in the history of MMA. So now the world is buzzing about Francis Ngannou. That knockout was shown on all the sports channels, on SportsCenter, on ESPN. It went viral. Everybody was talking about this heavyweight destroyer in Francis Ngannou. And just a few years earlier, just a few years before that moment, this guy was living on the streets of Cameroon, homeless. But he had a vision. And he always believed that he was going to make that vision a reality. Folks, you might be in a situation right now. You might not be homeless. You might not be quite that bad right now, but you might be in a situation where you feel like you're not going to be able to get anything going. You're not going to be able to cross that finish line. Do not fall victim to your current circumstances. Your current circumstances are temporary. Your life is never going to be a straight line. It's never going to be just a straightforward line to the finish line. The race of life is filled with a lot of ups and downs and a lot of zigzags and a lot of weird corners that you're going to take. But if you stay true to where you want to go and you are persistent, you are consistent, and you work your ass off every single day, you will get there. Francis Ngannou is a testament to that. I said life is never going to be a straight line. Francis experienced that firsthand because he went from bottom of the barrel to top of the world, but he started doing something that could ultimately be one of the most dangerous things you can do to self-sabotage yourself, and that is get too comfortable. Get too comfortable and believe your own hype. After that Overeem fight, Francis was positioned into his very first championship opportunity against then dominant champion Stipe Miocic. And this was Stipe in the prime of his career. Still, as of the recording of this video, nobody has had more successful consecutive title defenses as a heavyweight than Stipe. But in spite of that, everybody was saying that this kid, Francis Ngannou, was going to destroy Stipe. That he was going to run through him in the same way that he was running through everybody else at heavyweight. And that got in Francis's head. Francis started believing his own hype a little too much. And while there is power in that, I talked about that in a lot of videos on this channel. You need to believe in yourself. Success starts with what you believe. Because your subconscious, you get in your subconscious and you believe you're going to be successful, your subconscious is going to go to work and make that happen. So you need to believe in yourself. But when I say that he started believing his own hype too much, he legitimately thought that this was going to be a walk in the park. He thought he was going to go in there, run through Stipe, land that one big punch, and become heavyweight champion. Problem is, and I talked about this earlier on, his technique was not quite there yet. He didn't need technique yet. In the heavyweight division, you can kind of get by with your athleticism and your knockout power, and you can crack into the top 5 or even become a number 1 contender with very little technique. But the second you fight somebody to the caliber of a Stipe Miocic, who's going to drag you into the deep waters, who has some of the best fight IQ in that division, you're going to be in trouble. Especially you've never been in a 5-round fight before. You've never had your conditioning tested before. But again, Francis wasn't expecting to go 5 rounds. I'm sure, obviously, he trained for a 5-round fight, but I don't think he truly believed that he was going to go into the deep waters with Stipe Miocic. The second that fight got out of the first round, you started seeing Francis's gas tank totally diminish. And Stipe Miocic went in there, utilized a very wrestling-heavy game plan, which was brilliant. It was incredibly smart because Francis at that point, he was just a guy with one-punch power. And if he touched you, you were going out. But Stipe didn't give Francis the opportunity. He gassed him out, grinded out a very dominant decision victory. And listen, MMA fans are some of the most, I'll say, fickle and, ignorant group of people sometimes. And they can be cruel. They can be downright cruel. 1 second they're singing your praises. The very moment you lose, you're dead to them. Especially if they got money on you and you screw up their bet. Oh man, you're gonna hear it from the audience. And listen, people were ragging on Francis. Everybody was saying, "Oh, he's a fraud check. Francis got fraud checked against Stipe." Instead of giving Stipe credit for being the greatest heavyweight of all time and reminding people just how damn good he was, people were shitting all over Francis. And that got into his head. Because now he starts believing what the naysayers are saying. He starts believing what the critics are saying. And he goes out there in his next fight against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, the very same guy with the record for the most knockouts in the UFC's heavyweight division. So people were excited for this matchup. Francis Ngannou against Derek Lewis? There's no way this fight's not going to be crazy. There's no way that these guys aren't going to go out there, swing for the fences, and somebody's getting knocked out in brutal, devastating fashion. What actually happened was that fight ended up being one of the shittiest, most boring fights in the history of the UFC. Francis went in there gun shy. He was fearing Derek's power too much. I think he respected Derek Lewis's power a little bit too much. The remnants of that Stipe fight were still very fresh in his mind. All the criticism from the fans were very fresh in his mind. He went out there and shit the bed. And Derek Lewis, He won that fight. He didn't do much either. He just did a little bit more than Francis, and he got a decision win that ultimately propelled him into a title fight. But that was, that could have been a career killer for Francis Ngannou. That fight could have been the end of him. Francis went from being the future of the division, the guy that everybody was saying was going to be the Mike Tyson of the UFC, to now being down 2 fights in a row and looking horrible in those losses. Now he's dealing with all the critics, all the fan base saying he's a fraud, saying he was overrated, he's a one-trick pony. That could have been the end of him. And for most people, when most people get in those situations, they allow that to continue to downward spiral them because they listen to the voices. Those negative voices that are external, that they're hearing from other people, then become internal because now you're having these conversations with yourself. You're sitting in bed at night and you're saying to yourself, maybe I'm just not that good. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe people are right. Maybe I do suck. And you start believing that. But Francis had a turning point, and those losses, those setbacks ended up being the best thing for him because it turned him into an elite heavyweight because he went back to the drawing board. He went back with his coaches. He went back with his team, and he worked his ass off at sharpening up his game. He went from being just a one-punch power guy to developing all-round skills and becoming more technical with his boxing, more technical with his stand-up game, and he started adding wrestling to it. His takedown defense went up tremendously, and he started developing as a mixed martial artist. So again, your life is never going to be a straight line. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs, but there's always light. There's always light at the end of the tunnel if you believe it. You might be down right now, but you could just as easily turn things around. No matter what the circumstances, no matter how bad it might feel right now, you can always turn things around. Following that 2-fight skid, Francis went on an absolute tear. He absolutely destroyed Curtis Blades, Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez, and Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rosenstruck to get him a second opportunity at the title, another shot at Stipe Miocic. And this is where you truly saw the evolution in Francis's game, not just from a physical standpoint, not just, from a technique standpoint, but from a mindset standpoint. Because you have to imagine in the back of his mind, he was remembering that first fight. That first fight that he had with Stipe, where he mounted zero offense whatsoever, where he was humiliated, where he was gassed out terribly, he could barely breathe, and he was just totally dominated for 5 rounds. That was playing in the back of his mind. There's no way that it wasn't. There is no way that fight was not replaying in his mind. And the voice of negativity starts getting loud. I talk about this all the time. We got 2 voices. We got two wolves, right? 2 wolves on our shoulder. The one that wins is the one that you feed. But you can never totally kill the other wolf. You got one wolf that's telling you you're great, that's telling you that you can do it, that you can accomplish anything that you want to accomplish. You got it within you. And then you got the other wolf that's telling you, man, you suck. You're not good enough. You're not going to make this happen. You're just, don't even bother. The wolf that wins is the wolf that you feed. But you can't outright kill the bad wolf, but you can feed the good wolf a little bit more. Feed into those positive thoughts. And it starts with a mental diet. I guarantee you, there were some nights where Francis was thinking about, what if history repeats itself? What if I go in there with Stipe again and the same thing happens? And is this going to be the end of my career? Is this my only shot? Is this my last and only shot at becoming a champion? And that could be dangerous. Because if you feed into that too much, again, that bad wolf is going to win. And your performance is going to follow what you're telling yourself in your mind. But I guarantee you, what Francis Ngannou was able to do, he started feeding that good wolf. And he started turning the tables in his mind. He started visualizing how the rematch was going to play out. He started visualizing himself catching Stipe, knocking him out, winning that championship. He started feeling the championship being put on his waist by Dana White as if it was real, as if it was happening in this very moment. And he blocked out the doubt. He blocked out those negative thoughts. And then he went in there in the fight against Stipe, and he was totally present in the moment and went out there a totally different animal than that first fight. A lot more patient, a lot more technical. And he went in there and he starched Stipe Miocic, became heavyweight champion, became the guy that he said he was going to be when he left Cameroon all those years ago. He said, I'm going to be a heavyweight champion. And he became the UFC's heavyweight champion. But this is where his story starts taking a little bit of a different turn. Because you would think at this point, you would think that the UFC would be behind him. Because now they have this dominant powerhouse, this one-punch killer that they've been craving in the heavyweight division for years. A guy that they could market as, their Mike Tyson. You would think the organization would be 100% in his corner. But this is where they started bullying him. And they started trying to control. They started to try to control him. And Francis knew his worth. He knew he was worth a whole hell of a lot more than what the UFC was paying him at the time. And this is where you started seeing the battles between Francis and Dana White and the organization, the contract disputes playing out. I respect Dana White as a businessman, what he's been able to accomplish, and how he's taken the UFC to where it is now. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's just one of these guys that is a brilliant promoter, and whether you love him or hate him, you have to give the guy his just due. You got to give him respect for that. But at the same time, those bullying tactics, it was nothing new. It wasn't anything we haven't seen before. He's done this several times with other fighters, in the past, to where if there's a dispute, if there's a contract dispute, if a guy is trying to get some more money out of the organization, Dana will turn the fans against that fighter. And he'll come out and he'll say things like, he was saying Francis was afraid. He was afraid of taking risks. He was afraid of John Jones. All this nonsense, which made no sense because Francis went in there, defended his title against Cyril Gane with an injury when he didn't have to do that. He stepped up. He took that fight. He went out there against Cyril Gane, and he beat him. He won a decision. And still, Dana White is barely giving this guy any credit because they're going through a contract dispute. And Dana likes to kind of show that he's got power over these guys, right? And he starts telling the media, like, yeah, Francis doesn't want to take any risks, and he thinks he's worth all this money. But I think it's all about he wants to take the easy way out. He wants to take, he wants to go to boxing and he wants to fight these bums in the PFL and doesn't want to fight the best of the best, which was complete BS. It was not true. But people believe it. People will take whatever Dana White says at face value. And, this guy, he could be a politician because he's so good at the bullshit. He's so good at BSing people. And he's got a following that just takes his word as gospel. So the fan base started turning on Francis. And when it was ultimately announced that Francis and the UFC had parted ways, the fan base really turned on him. Everybody was saying, oh, this guy's ruining his career. He's taking the easy way out. He's a joke. All this stuff about him, right? And what happened? Francis gets that fight with Tyson Fury in Saudi Arabia. And again, the fan base is shitting all over it. They're like, this is a joke. Tyson Fury is going to destroy this guy. And for what? He's going to make a multi-million-dollar paycheck. But for what? His legacy is ruined. He's just another MMA guy crossing over to boxing, and he's going to get embarrassed. Francis went out there, and I talked about it at the start of the video. Yeah, he lost. He lost a decision. I thought I thought it was a close fight. I understand why they gave Tyson the win, but what Francis was able to do against Tyson freaking Fury, the greatest heavyweight in the last 20 years, goes in there, drops him, and goes the distance with him and is able to have a competitive fight with him. Now all of a sudden people are starting, all the haters, all the people talking shit, now everybody's saying, man, maybe Francis made the right decision. Because he made more money in that one fight with Tyson Fury than the entirety of his UFC career. And you can sit here and you can say, oh, well, his legacy, like he could have went down in history as the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. Listen, money talks. At the end of the day, yes, legacy is important. And I'm sure legacy is important to Francis. But for a guy that had nothing, for a guy that was homeless, that was living in poverty, to now make multi-millions of dollars, I think that matters a whole hell of a lot more. So you can sit there and you can shit on the guy for not signing another contract with the UFC and fighting Jon Jones. Listen, he made a lot more in that one fight with Tyson Fury, and he's going to make a whole hell of a lot more in this fight with Anthony Joshua this weekend. Guys, we got to take bets on ourselves sometimes. Sometimes we got to take that leap of faith. And listen, you might fail. You might fall flat on your ass, but you got to take those risks. Everything worth having in life is worth taking those risks for. Sure, Francis could have played it safe. He could have re-signed with the UFC. He might have beaten Jon Jones too. You never know. I mean, I don't know how that fight would have played out. I think I would have leaned more on Jones, but then again, man, I don't know. Francis has the kind of power. I mean, if Dominic Reyes was able to drop Jon Jones at light heavyweight, Francis would have taken his fucking head off. But would he have been able to get the opportunity? That's the question. And that's a fight that I still hope happens before those guys retire. It's not very likely. I do think Jon Jones is probably going to retire before that ever happening. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. He could have taken that route. He could have re-signed with the UFC and defended his heavyweight title multiple times, beaten Stipe Miocic's record, go down in history as the greatest heavyweight of all time. Or he has a chance now to do something spectacular, which is become the first guy to cross over to boxing from MMA and become a heavyweight champion in that sport. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you that that's going to happen. I'm not even going to tell you that he's going to beat Anthony Joshua. I don't think he wins that fight. I think Anthony Joshua watched that fight with Tyson Fury, and he's realizing, I got to take this guy a whole lot more serious than Tyson Fury took him. So I don't think Francis is going to look all that great against Anthony Joshua. I think Joshua is going to win pretty decisively. But I'm rooting for Francis. I'd love to see Francis Ngannou go out there and beat a guy like Anthony Joshua. That would be crazy. That would be huge. But I don't see it happening. But having said that, he's going to make a whole hell of a lot more money in that fight than he ever would have made fighting Jon Jones in the UFC. So, again, you have to take bets on yourself sometimes. Yes, he's going to go fight in the PFL after this, and people are shitting on that too because, the PFL does not really have an established heavyweight division to the caliber of the UFC, but they do have some interesting matchups for him. One of them is against the current PFL heavyweight champion, Hernan Ferreira, who just knocked out Ryan Bader to kind of unify the Bellator and PFL titles. That's an interesting fight. Hernan Ferreira is a dangerous guy. Very big, very imposing heavyweight with a ton of knockout power. So that's a fun fight. And Francis is going to make a lot in that fight too. The PFL, they pay their fighters pretty rewardingly. So, listen, am I bummed that Francis is not in the UFC anymore? Of course. Because I'd love to see him fight Jon Jones. I'd love to see him fight Tom Aspinall, some of these other guys that are up and coming, Sergey Spivak. A lot of interesting matchups for him in the UFC. And I think he's 37 years old now, so will he ever come back? Probably not. But you never know. He could end up becoming the very first fighter outside of the UFC to work a cross promotion with the organization. And I know Dana's always said he's never going to cross promote, he's never going to co-promote with another organization. But Dana's not necessarily running the show anymore. I mean, he's the figurehead. He's the president. The TKO company, Ari Emanuel and TKO, they are the owners of the organization. And if they really wanted to see Francis fight John Jones, I feel like they would work some kind of co-promotion out, regardless of Dana White's opinion on the matter. So you could see that happening. And again, all of these people that were saying Francis is ruining his career, they're eating crow right now because this guy is making ridiculous money, doing what he loves to do, and everything he set out to accomplish, he manifested into 3D reality. And he was positioned, like I said, on that race of life, as far away from that finish line as you could possibly be. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't born into a rich family, a famous family. He wasn't even born middle class. He was born way, way, way behind, probably even way before where the race even started. But he got to the finish line. And you can too. Regardless of where you are currently positioned on that race of life, regardless of your current environment, your current 3D circumstances, and how bad things may appear for you right now, again, your life is never going to be a straight line. But you can always turn things around. It's what you do next that counts. How bad do you want it? And do you truly, deep down, believe that you are destined for more? Because if the answer to that is yes, you will find a way. Your thoughts create your reality because your thoughts inspire the actions that will ultimately create that reality for you. With that being said, guys, until next time, let's unleash greatness. Boom!